Oh, Ellie, if only you hadn't picked presidential harassment as your drinking game word during the Supreme Court arguments, you would not
I
be
wouldn't have needed to
so
go to the
hungover.
hospital last night to get my stomach pumped. Hey, before we start, can I respond to Jared Kushner?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna do my Sam Jackson voice. I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
All right, thank you. We had to dump half of that, but okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. That he'll take that under consideration. What's in the Constitution for when we hold an election?
Just be clear for your listeners so they don't get freaked out. The date of the presidential election is set by statute. It can only be changed by an act of Congress. And if you live in a world where you think Nancy freaking Pelosi is gonna move the election of Donald Trump, you've got another thing coming.
Yeah, there you go. Wow, Ellie, you live tweeted the entire Supreme Court thing. Yeah, I just love that they were. My main thing is they're saying the president's too busy for this while the president's tweeting. What was it, Travis? 150 tweets and yeah, right.
All of the tweets.
Yeah, he's too busy. He's too busy coming up with nicknames for his enemies on the golf course to answer a federal subpoena. Like yesterday was one of the worst days for democracy that I've seen, and that's one of the and I anticipating that it was going to be. That's why I live tweeted the oral arguments. There is a level of slavish devotion to Donald Trump from the Republican Supreme Court justices that is just, it's embarrassing for them, right? Like it's like watching a bully kind of stride through the mall, beating up people, and then having his little like posse come run behind him, like cleaning up his mess. Like you feel almost embarrassed for the posse, right? These are supposed to be some of the most respected people in our society. And yesterday they were cravenly, desperately trying to repeat Trump lines in their questions. And I mean, they used the term presidential harassment as if they were getting their questions from Trump's Twitter feed.
Right.
These are Supreme Court justices.
Ellie, as a non-lawyer, I keep saying I just don't get how the precedents of Clinton and Nixon somehow, what did they actually argue? Oh, those are too recent? I'm like, what now? We had Jill Wine-Banks on live when that came down, and she's like, she was trying not to laugh. She's like, what?
It's not an argument, right? Like, it's not a legal argument to say that these precedents don't matter because they happened to recently. And that was their, as I wrote in The Nation, you would have thought that given the unprecedented legal craziness that the Trump lawyers were offering, they would have had some really like depth or technical or interesting legal argument to justify their position. In fact, they went the entirely opposite way. They had nothing. They were just like, well, because we say so.
Right.
Because we say so became their like default legal argument, right? Why shouldn't we care about Clinton v. Jones? Why shouldn't we care about Nixon? Because we say so.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you said the two liberals who were old enough to remember Paula Jones, Ginsburg and Breyer, remember what the Republicans pulled with Paula Jones. I mean,
Breyer was pissed. Like Breyer is generally like everybody's like benign granddad.
Yeah.
He was angry yesterday at these lawyers for basically peeing in his ear and telling him it was raining, right? Like Breyer sat there. These lawyers were using Breyer's concurrence in Clinton v. Jones as justification for why Trump shouldn't have to file subpoenas. And Breyer was like, I wrote the damn concurrence. I know what I meant, and it's not what you said.
He went all Bernie. I wrote the damn bill.
Right?
But you also said when Gorsuch asked, what more do you require the House to do? You were like, Gorsuch is in play, y'all. Gorsuch is freaking in play, in all caps. You got a little excited.
Okay, so I do this thing sometimes where I grasp at straws. I try to like hang on to something I think might be positive or might be real in this like horrible world that we live in.
Right.
I think that there is a chance that Gorsuch is not as fully committed to the Trump agenda as the rest of these conservatives. And the part of the way that I get there is, I'm sure you've read or heard about the problem with second wave revolutionaries. Mm-hmm. They actually believe all that crap.
Right. Yeah.
Right. First wave, they kind of understand, like, we're just saying this to get power, right? Right. It's the second wave that's like, no, we really believe in like permanent revolution. Gorsuch is a second wave originalist. He believes all the bunk that Scalia just said to get power.
Yeah.
So that's generally bad. But in a case like this, it might be okay, because if he actually believes in any kind of like strict textual understanding of the Constitution, then interpreting the Constitution as giving the president monarchical powers is simply not there. And so I think that there is a chance that Gorsuch understands that elevating the president to the level of a king is just not something that's good even for his side. And so I think he's gettable. A lot of people, liberals, rightly kind of disagree with me, because like at the end of the day, Gorsuch has made these kind of noises before, and then always fallen in the line in the end.
You, by the way, agree with you on Justice Alito. You said people need to understand the list of travesties wrought by George W. Bush. Justice Alito is up there with the Iraq War and Hurricane Katrina. Mm-hmm. You quoted him, "I don't know how good this court is at predicting the impact of our decisions." You're like, this effing guy, sat in the well of Congress and mouthed "not true" at President Obama when he explained the impact of Citizens United 100% correctly, right?
I can't, like... So you know how in Star Wars lore with the Sith, there's always two? And so it's like when Scalia died, Alito became the master of being a punk. He is cynical. He is acerbic. He's dour. He's mean-spirited. He doesn't like his job, and yet he is like the intellectual like backbone of the conservative movement on the court. During oral arguments yesterday, not only did he kind of repeatedly, he was the leader in the clubhouse of repeating Trump's Twitter feed as if they were Supreme Court questions.
Yeah.
The other thing that he did that I couldn't kind of just accept was his tone towards the Democratic lawyers. At one point, he suggested that the reason why Cy Vance, the New York City prosecutor, wants the documents is so they can leak those documents to the New York Times, which not only is not a legal argument, it's basically cribbed from an InfoWars clip.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's where the conservative movement is in this country at this point. The Supreme Court justices are using Alex Jones conspiracy theories as legal arguments.
Yeah, or Fox News talking. Cases. Yeah, Fox News talking points. Well, you also made a good point. You said Vance's lawyers are now pointing out that what Trump is really trying to do is run out the clock on the statute of limitations to escape accountability for his crimes, even when he's out of office. You're right. They kind of gave up the game there.
Yeah, I mean, it's and Kavanaugh responded that with, okay, well, let's pretend that's not true. I mean, literally, Kavanaugh asked the question that was, let's pretend that the statute of limitations doesn't run out. I mean, I know it does, but let's pretend that it doesn't. Do you have any other problems? And it's like, well, no.
Let's pretend I'm not a drunken rapist perjurer. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But no, it's like, well, if I'm drowning and you remove all the water, well, then yeah, I guess I'm fine. But the problem is that I'm drowning.
Well, I liked your breezy summary of arguments for non-lawyers. Libs, why don't the ordinary rules apply to Trump? GOP, because he's Donald Trump. Libs, so? GOP, presidential harassment, Trump derangement syndrome. Libs, is that your real argument? Roberts, works for me.
That's where we are. And you know, again, one of the reasons why I wrote so much about this case is that, you know, we get confused. We get, you know, we're following the shiny object, Trump's tax returns, financial documents, crimes. This is a basic function of the rule of law. Anybody else in this country, if they were subpoenaed, would have to answer it. And you, me, my kid, anybody else would have to answer the subpoena. There are defenses that you can make. You can say some of this information is privileged, some of the things are overbroad, but you can't just ignore a subpoena. And the idea that Trump, simply because he's Donald Trump, can be the only person in the country to simply ignore a subpoena is just bonkers. And I think people need to understand just how far afield the Republicans have gone to even fix their mouths to make this argument.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
insulting that we are even here.
You moved on from effing Alito to effing Thomas. His question is basically, why do we think Congress has that subpoena power at all? You said basically Clarence Thomas asking whether over 200 years of precedent should matter at all. I mean, I guess we're at that point where literally nothing matters anymore because Trump. I mean,
nothing matters. It's almost like nothing can be done. And what we're really kind of waiting on is to see whether how crazy does Roberts want to be. Like our entire notion of the rule of law kind of now rests on whether John Roberts wants a good story in the New York Times or a bad story in the New York Times. I mean that's where we are, right?
As usual.
Clarence Thomas. I mean, like one of the fun things about these arguments being made public is that Clarence Thomas is actually talking. Usually he doesn't talk at all during oral arguments, but since he's on the phone, I guess he feels like he should say something. And
well, in his defense, that's the time that he and his wife usually drunk dial. What's her name? Anita Hill, and ask for an apology 20 years later. So they're chatty on the phone.
Oh, I hate them. But when Thomas bothers to talk, what's fun about it is that you get just a little sense into how completely ideologically radical this man is, right?
Yeah,
like he's actually that crazy that he thinks something as simple as congressional subpoena power, which, as I said, has been present in this country for over 200 years, maybe doesn't exist at all. Like we just want to throw it out there.
Well,
maybe we've been doing it wrong for 200 years.
As usual, RBG makes the most sense. She said, counsel, in so many of these prior cases, there was cooperation. For example, tax returns. Every president voluntarily turned over his tax returns. So it gets to be a pitched battle because Trump is the first one to refuse to do that. Initially, Trump said it was because of an audit was ongoing. Now it seems to be broader than that. But the aura of this case is really sauce for the goose that served the gander as well. So how do you distinguish, say, Whitewater when President Clinton's personal records were subpoenaed from his accountant, or even Hillary Clinton's law firm Billy records were subpoenaed? I mean, their hypocrisy is. Didn't she at one point just go, "Yeah, how'd that go on Paul Jones?" Like she has zero F's left to give.
That's exactly. So after she said that, the Republican lawyer didn't really answer her question, and then Roberts tried to cut her off, and before he did, she goes, "I don't work out for Paul Jones."
She just became a heckler at Yuck Yucks. I love it.
She's in her golden years in every sense of the word. But it does go to my point that we kind of talked about earlier. The justices who were there for Clinton v. Jones, Ginsburg and Breyer, were particularly pissy yesterday because they have lived long enough to have heard these arguments before made by Republicans in the exact opposite way, and they just weren't kind of having hypocrisy.
Here was my favorite. RBG said the court should not second-guess the House's own judgment. She said, why should we not defer to the House about its own legislative purposes? Thank you. I mean, I'm still hopeful about the New York part of this, but maybe you're not. I still feel like there's a chance that he's going to have to. Lawrence O'Donnell said that last night. I think that he thinks the Vance case that he's going to have to give his tax returns to New York. That he thinks that part of the case. I don't know. We'll see, right?
Dude, I'm on record. My face look like that is like Lawrence O'Donnell should have quote tweeted me. Like I said the night before the arguments that my official prediction is that Roberts sides with conservatives on the House subpoenas because he gives Trump a victory over the Democrats in the House, but he sides with the New York prosecutor in the Vance case, not because the cases are all that different, but because there's just almost no way to be a Republican and not vet prosecutors.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we always end when you call me dude because it makes me so hot. All right. Thank you, dude. Thank you, Ellie. Love you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice one.
See you soon.